My delivery for my very own Tron from the Urza startup is arriving soon. If you remember right, we're ordering this so that we can bring the Eldrazi back into the world and destroy the Jeskai government. Hopefully the tower, power plant, and mine will help me control the Eldrazi. And while I appreciate the Boros Electric Company fending them off so I could get my power back, I'm done being a cog in the machine, you hear? So let's talk about Eldrazi Tron. It's basically a deck that leverages having an insane amount of mana through having Urza's Mine, power plant, and tower, creating 7 mana, that's Tron, or in conjunction with Eldrazi Temple and Ugin's Labyrinth, to be able to cast very large colors creatures and spells, and to just overpower the opponent. It's a little weird because sometimes it's a watered down Tron deck, and sometimes it's a glorified Ponza deck because you're destroying lands, you're getting really far ahead in mana. Ah, sick, it's here! It's a little smaller than I imagined. The instructions say to just turn them sideways and summon the Eldrazi. Here we go. Whoa, it worked! Ah! 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 Oh, I must destroy the government! Oh hey, I just finished up my worship of the glorious Ulamog. Would you like to hear about our Lord and Savior? Excellent. Eldrazi Tron uses mana from normal Tron decks in Urza's Tower, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Mine. When all 3 of them are on the battlefield, they produce 7 mana total. However, there's another side of the deck in Eldrazi Temple that can produce 2 mana when you're playing an Eldrazi, and Ugin's Labyrinth, where when it enters the battlefield, you can put something that costs 7 or more, which there's a lot in this deck, and it'll produce 2 mana for anything. We're also playing a Forest and a Beseju so we can search it up with Expedition Map or draw it naturally for Artifact and Enchantment Hate, and a Forest just so we have something to grab when Field of Ruin and Ghost Quarter effects and stuff like that happen. That being said, we kind of cheat by having so much mana so early on so few lands. In order to grab those lands, especially different pieces of Tron, or if we don't already have some Tron pieces, some Ugin's Labyrinth or Eldrazi Temple, we have Expedition Map. 1 mana artifact, you can pay 2 mana, sack it, and search out any land, which remember you can also still grab Beseju with. We're also playing 4 Talisman of Resilience for us to be resilient against our Jeskai overlords. A 2 mana artifact, you can tap it to create 1 waste mana, or tap it and lose a life to create a green or a black. We care about this green. We don't want to run that many lands. We need all of our lands to produce multiple mana if possible, and so having a mana rock so we can ramp mana even faster is excellent. I'm playing 2 Dismember in the main deck because these decks like Nadu, if it isn't banned yet, I'm recording this significantly before this is actually posted, and Boros Energy are really scary and we need that interaction in the main deck. I'm playing 4 Sowing Mycospawn for additional ways to grab more lands to leverage our mana advantage, and it also leverages our mana advantage by destroying our opponent's land if we kick it. 4 Thought-Knot Seer to be able to kind of stop our opponent from doing stuff. It's also something we can cast as early as turn 2 with 2 Eldrazi Temple, 2 Ugin's Labyrinth, or any combination of the 2. 4 Karn the Great Creator. Karn is excellent in stopping our opponent's artifacts from activating, but also it allows us to have a Karn board, and we can leverage a lot of cards in our Karn board to be good for basically any situation, because hopefully when we're casting Karn, we have a crazy large amount of mana. And we're playing 3 The One Ring in the main deck, the 4th being in the Karn board, for some incredible card advantage and protection. As far as huge payoffs, besides Karn being a payoff in and of itself, playing a World Breaker to be able to deal with artifacts, enchantments, and to continue to leverage our mana advantage by destroying our opponent's lands. 4 Devourer of Destiny, allowing us to smooth out our opening hands by revealing it and being able to look at the top 4 and put 1 of them back on top of our deck and exile the rest. And it's just a really great removal and a creature and a threat and all of that stuff all kind of wrapped up into one. The card's excellent, and also something we can slap on an Ugin's Labyrinth. Playing 3 Allah's Dust to wipe the board because we're also like a pseudo control deck. 4 Kozilek's Command because Kozilek's Command just adds so much value. Being able to make Scion so we have mana on future turns, being able to like scry a whole bunch and put cards we don't want in the bottom. Unfortunately, we have to play a lot of cards that don't do stuff for our mana advantage. Again, just like a Ponza deck. Being a removal spell and being Graveyard Hate, all wrapped up into 1 card, is so good. And we're playing a 1 of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, my boy thing, non-binary homie, just as another really huge card, but when we start drawing a whole bunch of cards to finally end the game, destroy lands, destroy things that we don't want, or exile, I guess. As far as the sideboard goes, we're playing a Karn board. Some decks are playing Dismembers in their Karn board. We are not. We're playing those Dismembers in the main deck. As far as my Karn board goes, I'm playing a Phyrexian Metamorph. It's really good against other The One Ring decks, and is a way for us to copy our own One Ring if we really need to reset it and things like that. Playing a Tormod's Crypt, having a 0 mana Graveyard Hate thing is super important, so we can have 4 mana, immediately grab Tormod's Crypt and be able to not die to Living End Agora's Vengeance. 2 Haywire Might. There's a lot of crazy artifacts and enchantments, whether it be Static Prism or the One Rings or Urza Saga. Awesome. A Disruptor Flute, kind of as our Pithy Needle-ish effect. A Liquid Metal Coating, so that when we grab it with Karn, we can make a land an artifact, and then plus Karn on that land to destroy that land. A Soulless Jailer for a lot of different things, for things like Living End, for things like Flage. It's one of those cards that isn't very good at each individual thing it does, but because it does so much, it deserves a spot. Playing a Stonebrain for our extraction effect. An Ensnaring Bridge for when we really need our opponents to pump the brakes. An Oblivion Stone, this one's a little bit of a weird one, but I like Oblivion Stone because we need a board wipe to grab with Karn, because we can't rely on drawing Allah's Dust every single time, especially against like energy and stuff like that. Playing a Trinisphere for things like Ruby Storm, or really anything that has like a lot of really low mana cards to kind of like mess up their tempo. Playing a One Ring so we can get that card advantage with Karn as well. We are effectively playing 7 the One Ring. A Wormcoil Engine just as a solid, resilient lifelinker blocker, and also just a decent all-around finisher. A Cityscape level, again, as a finisher, but also as a don't care what it is removal. And a Walking Ballista to easily deal with those small creatures, to be able to grab the Karn, and it's a decent finisher as well. All right, think I hear something. We converted this shelter some loser was hiding from us into a temple for Ulamog. Let's talk about flex slots in your Eldrazi deck. In the main deck, there are 5 flex slots. In those slots, I'm playing 1 Worldbreaker, the 3rd All Is Dust, the 2 Dismember, and the 4th Talisman of Resilience. Now, in any of those slots, you could play the 2nd Worldbreaker, the 2nd Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, the 4th All Is Dust, the 4th the One Ring, and Ugin the Spirit Dragon. In the sideboard, there are 6 flex slots. In those slots, I'm playing the 2nd Haywire Might, the Oblivion Stone, the Phyrexian Metamorph, the Soulless Jailer, the One Ring, and the Wormcoil Engine. In any of those slots, you could be playing a Chalice of the Void, up to 2 Dismember, the 2nd Disruptor Flute, the 3rd Haywire Might, 1 Sundering Titan, and the 2nd Stonebrain. Our Herald beckons. Bring upon all organization, chaos, and nothingness. Down with the Jeskai government. Revenge on the Boros Electric Company. To the void with you all! Yes. Consume and assimilate. The Eldrazi are a masterpiece of synergy and beauty. Let's talk about synergies regarding the Eldrazi. Remember, you can grab Liquid Metal Coating with Karn, turn those lands into artifacts, then plus Karn on the lands to be land destruction on a stick. Remember to do the math for the land Sowing Mica Spawn is grabbing when you're deciding what to do that turn if you're casting Sowing Mica Spawn. It's really important to sort out whether you're having an Eldrazi Temple / Uggin's Labyrinth game or a Tron game. The lands you grab and things you have are really relevant, because if you have a bunch of Eldrazi temples, grabbing 1 Tron piece, or maybe the 2nd Tron piece, isn't adding that much mana to your mana pool unless you're very lucky. At the same time, if you could be completing Tron instead of grabbing an Eldrazi temple, you should be doing that. Remember, you can Kozilek's command for X = 0 to just draw a card, essentially, which is pretty relevant in some cases. If you're making Eldrazi spawns with Kozilek's command, it's always good, unless you're worried about a counterspell, to max out the X in casting Kozilek's command, because you're going to get the mana back with the Eldrazi spawns anyway, even if you plan on using that mana that same turn. Remember, you can grab Tormod's Crypt with Karn to exile your own graveyard so that you exile some artifacts that might have already been dealt with by your opponent in the graveyard, to then grab again with Karn, because Karn can grab exiled artifacts. And of course, I say this when we talk about any One Ring deck, Redundant the One Rings lets you reset the counters on the One Ring. You just get to select the newest the One Ring, get rid of the one with 3, 4, or 5 counters on it, and continue drawing cards and protecting yourself. At last, the Eldrazi are consuming the world, but there are still those who stand before us. Let's talk about how to defeat them. And the weird thing about sideboarding with this deck is our entire sideboard is a Karn board. So it's important to remember that the things we're grabbing with that was a stupid idea. The things we're siding in, we can no longer grab with Karn. The way I kind of think about sideboarding with decks like this is if there's a matchup where we always grab the same card with Karn, we leave that card in the sideboard, because that means that there'll be essentially 4 copies of the card in our deck because of the 4 Karns, rather than 1 copy in our deck because we're taking away the ability to grab it with Karn. Then I bring in the other things that are good against the deck for a better chance to draw them. That, and it's important to take out the cards that are bad and bring in cards that actually do something, even if we wouldn't normally grab them with Karn. And that's generally the philosophy that we're going to follow. So against Bant Nadu, if that deck hasn't been banned yet, again, I'm recording this pretty significantly before it's posted because it takes forever to edit. We're gonna take out 3 the One Ring because they can kill through the one. Well, I guess they technically can't kill through the One Ring, but they can kill all our lands. So it doesn't really matter if we have protection from the One Ring. We're taking out 3 the One Ring, bringing in a Haywire Might for their Urza Saga and their Shuko and their 2-mana enchantment. I can't remember the name of it. A Cityscape Leveler and a Walking Ballista. Against Jeskai Control and Eldrazi Tron, we're actually sideboarding the same. We're bringing out 2 Dismember and the 3 All Is Dust, bringing in a Cityscape Leveler, a Walking Ballista, the Stone Brain, a Haywire Might, and a Wormcoil Engine. Against Boros Energy and Mardu Energy, no sideboard changes, we're running it back. Against Gora's Vengeance, we're bringing out the 3 All Is Dust, because it doesn't really do anything. And we're bringing in the Soulless Jailer, in the One Ring, and in the 1 Wormcoil Engine. Against Mono Black Midrange, we're bringing out Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, and out a Worldbreaker, bringing in a Haywire Might, and bringing in a Wormcoil Engine. Against Dimir Murktide, no changes. Against Ruby Storm, we're bringing out the 3 All Is Dust, bringing in the 1 Trinisphere, and bringing in the 2 Haywire Might. Against Living End, we're bringing out the 2 Dismember, Worldbreaker, and the Ulamog, bringing in the Trinisphere, the Disruptor Flute, a Soulless Jailer, and the One Ring. My final thoughts about this Tron deck is that if the meta decides it wants to beat it, it can. And it's important to remember that, especially if you're playing this deck locally. There's a lot of really easy ways to hate out this deck. The lands are easy to hate out, and sometimes it just doesn't produce the mana the deck needs to function. And you sit there looking at a bunch of expensive cards in your hand, and it does literally nothing. That being said, this reversion doesn't actually rely on assembling Tron like the other versions. Let's refer back to the 2 modes that we were talking about. Having the 2 modes means you have more keepable hands, but not being all in on Tron makes the average power level of the deck just a little bit lower. And who can possibly defeat us? We're going to consume all! What's that? Someone took over a power plant in mine? Why? To burn the coal for more energy? That's horrible for the environment. Come on.